Hello and welcome to today's NBA Sharp Betting Breakdown here on the Advantage Sports Betting Podcast. I am your host, Michael Fiddle. Today is Tuesday, November 26th, and we have 5 games to break down on this card. It is NBA Cup, I believe, night 4 and game 3 for a lot of these teams. So we will go through where these teams sit in their respective standings, what these cup games implicate for these teams, what's the sense of urgency, what are the sharp sides, where the lines have moves, what are my best bets, and we will go through this card together. I do not have professional poker player Drew Johnson with me. He is normally here with me on Tuesdays, but because of the holiday and because of having Thanksgiving and because of the way the NBA schedule is set, and honestly, sidebar, because of how locked in Drew was to Sunday night's movement and Monday's NBA card, and he was loving his positions. So I was like, dude, just come on with me tomorrow. I'd love to have you. We could skip Tuesday. It's a little 5-game slate. So a little solo show for me. I will say people are going to be very happy when I come on here and start off this pod by saying NBA Cup Tuesday, November 26th, seems to be an overcard. This NBA Cup lines might have finally turned to where it's over season, which is actually the inverse of last year, where overs hit in nights 1 and 2 in the NBA Cup and then dropped off precipitously for the other nights. Now, a lot of that is based on closing lines. Like a lot of stats that you refer to in the past is based on closing lines. And while that stuff is important, and while it does show the efficiency of an NBA market and the line movement and where these directions go, and why it's important to value those things in your handicap, it also doesn't totally apply to the way I approach the market, because I'm always betting opening lines. Limits at open aren't that big of a concern to me. I'm not placing multiple $1,000s as soon as lines open. So I could still bet openers and try and get really good numbers and then try and work the movement into my favor. And that as long as closing lines are somewhat efficient or the lines are somewhat sharp, I should come out ahead in those positions. So referring to where lines have moved and where lines have closed and what the stats are relative to a group of closes doesn't really take into account, like, where did these lines open? Where did they move? How much did they move? Did any of them land in the closing line value zone? Was there any middle opportunities? So slightly different. But I will say a lot of people have been correlating NBA Cup with starters playing longer, more fouling towards the end of games, and therefore look to over. I've been pretty adamant that I don't want to buy into that. I don't want to say that's certainly what's happening, because I don't believe that's totally what's happening. And the data, the numbers show that's not totally what's happening. The way that these lines have moved and the way the market has been efficient, if you've blindly played unders, I believe Ian pulled the stats earlier for me today. Ian Toria, research assistant for the Advantage and content producer, in the back of the studio right now, dropping in injury updates. Follow him on Twitter at Ian Legend 01. He's actually starting to put up some great prop stuff on Twitter, and he's very good at handicapping these spots because he's got charts for every teams and what they specialize in and which stats sets to target, and then he pairs them up against them and goes shopping in the price market. So I believe he's been doing pretty well. I might have to make Ian start giving out like a little daily prop. It's nice that he caps props, because not totally the market that I study a lot. Honestly, it's not a thing where I don't like to bet props. That's not it at all. I just haven't studied them with the amount of time that I put in. I much prefer sides and totals and then other markets as well. All right, so let's get into this card. What I was going to say is that Ian's stats that he's provided, and I'm pretty sure this is what he was talking about, was that unders are 18 and 16 on opening lines. Therefore, unders have been blindly profitable to play through the first 3 or 4 nights of 3 games worth for each team of NBA Cup action. If you win 18 and you lose 16, you're plus 18 units. You're minus 16. And then assuming that you're paying minus 110, you're an additional minus 1.6. So slight profit with a 0.4 unit take home if you're blindly betting opening unders. And on the flip side, I believe it's been very strong if you've been betting closing line overs. 21 and 13 betting closing line overs. So we could see the dichotomy and really the efficiency of NBA markets. And really, it's dependent on when you are betting. Because if I was betting closing line unders, I would be, or closing line, sorry about that. If I was betting opening line overs instead of my opening line unders, because I bet opening lines, then I would be getting smacked in the mouth, winning 16, losing 18, and then losing an additional 1.8. I'd be negative 3.8 units. If you were betting closing line unders, you'd be getting even more smacked in the mouth. So it's all dependent on who you are as a bettor, when you enter these markets, where the lines are specifically moving. And I don't believe we can come to any firm opinion on the data set, except for that the NBA market has proven itself to be efficient when it comes to totals during the NBA Cup. All right. 10-minute fucking intro before we break down a single game in a solo show. I apologize. Let's get to the business. The Chicago Bulls take on the Washington Wizards in Washington. This line has steamed towards the Bulls. I saw 4.5s literally just about an hour ago as I was starting to ramp up for the show. We do have 4.5s mainly across the board. We do know 4 was the open, 3.5 at some places on the Bulls side. Circa 4.5, FanDuel 5, DraftKings 4.5, MGM 4.5, Bet365 4.5. Some of these offshores laying 4.5, but starting to juice the favorite and the Chicago Bulls side. Bet Rivers minus 113. That's not an offshore. I'm just referring to a different one on the Chicago Bulls. So looking like Bulls are taking some action. I do believe we have Jordan Poole questionable. Let me check that out real quick. We're having Ian drop in the injury updates in the chat. Great reason to show up to the live stream and view it on the YouTube. We don't just already have Dylante checking in, aka the captain of the Halliburton Hive, the Capitan over here, dropping in that I'm a Halliburton hater. I'm not. I just wish he was better. So we have Ian dropping all of the latest injury updates. So all up to date, and how these lines are going to move is also dependent on when these guys are going to be ruled in or out for shoot around. So right now, Jordan Poole questionable, Lonzo doubtful, and Patrick Williams is just out. We know he has kind of a long-term injury for the Bulls. We know Lonzo's just dealing with some stuff. He'll be reevaluated in probably a week and a half. Jordan Poole questionable, but based on line movement, I would say Jordan Poole leaning towards active, because the total has climbed from a cool 240.5 at open to now 245s across the board. Anything from 244.5 to 245.5. 240.5 was the open at DraftKings. 242 was the open at FanDuel. Let's see, when the sharper book started to open, 244 was the open at Circa. The reason why I'm going in that order, specifically to this card, DraftKings has been laying these NBA Cup odds the earliest and keeping them up, which is something we referenced in the Friday show that we did a few days ago when going over NBA Cup lines, and saying that we smashed DraftKings because they didn't update their lines when every other book started coming out. So we were able to take advantage of DraftKings odds in the NBA Cup market because they were kind of stale even at open when other books started to come online. And you could see what other opening consensus was with updated information, and DraftKings was still a little off date. So even in this context, DraftKings opens first, 240.5. FanDuel comes online next, 242. Circa comes online third, 244. And yet we're still seeing over steam. Now, I played the over 240.5 and the under 243.5, creating a live middle when those guys were available at the same time. Now, I knew that over was the direction that this market was headed, but I didn't tilt my middle. I actually just made a completely even 1.5 units in both directions. Both lines are on the 0.5 on the half point. So there's no push numbers going from 240.5 to 243.5 on those tickets. So this is going to be risk 0.15 units to win 3, a classic 20-1 type of middle. And because of that Jordan Poole questionable, I was very unsure over the way that this total would move. I knew that that was a positive value middle. Knowing I had these teams, you either can get one that lands 270 or you can get one that lands, 230 because the Wizards offense really stalls. So I didn't have an opinion much towards direction. I did see that the over was taking steam. Overs take steam in a lot of Bulls and Wizards games. Something to be aware of. Eric chimes in, what is the best time in the AM to catch stale odds? I don't even know if best time certainly exists. I would say let's see. Let's actually pull up the time cards for those things. So DraftKings literally had these online like for a long time. So I'm seeing 11:24. So Sunday, these were up at 7 p.m. So after Sunday's slate of games, Tuesday's odds were immediately put up. And honestly, that's these markets were even up like a few days earlier, and even during preseason, all NBA Cup games were priced almost like NFL look-ahead lines. So Sunday night was when DraftKings came up online, and then it was yesterday afternoon that FanDuel came online. So in terms of this card and this slate, I would have said it started to be around 8 p.m. Eastern time last night when you started to see line movement maybe between 8 to 10 p.m. That's not typical because when you don't have pre-priced games, you're not going to get odds posted until then at the very start. So it just dependent on, there's a lot of factors to that, Eric. In this regard, you say what time is it best in the morning to catch stale odds? In this one, it was 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern time last night. And that fluctuates. So it does matter when a lot of things are starting to come to market. Let's check when Circa posted them online. They were last night at 11:50 p.m. Makes me feel bad because I was definitely awake to see all of that. So go to sleep and stop watching the odds board every fucking hour. Note to self. In terms of this game, Bulls taking steam, overtaking steam. Personally, I don't want any action based on where the numbers sit now. And some of the relative news that I do think Jordan Poole is going to be active. So I think the total probably stays where it is. And maybe the spread comes down to 4.5 or 4 or a inexpensive 5. You're getting minus 114 on the +5 right now. So shout out what Steve Fezzik says in relative to NFL stuff. He says he created the decimal odds. I've learned a lot from him, so I'll shout him out when I can. This is essentially a Washington Wizards plus 4.9, plus 4.85, because you're paying an expensive number for the 5. Let's go to Milwaukee Bucks visiting the Miami Heat. 2.5 and 2 were the various opens for this game for the Milwaukee Bucks. This is one where we really need to talk about what's the urgency in terms of NBA Cup stuff. We have Ian dropping the injury report, Nikola Jovic in, Haywood Highsmith in, probable are Terry Rozier and Giannis. Those guys are both going to play. Taurean Prince is questionable. I would assume he is definitely going to play as well, as he's been active recently and cooking. Taurean Prince, shout out Big Dog. Follow Darvin Ham from LA to Milwaukee and really filling in nicely as a role player early this season. When he, you see it says Middleton out 2 more games on the injury report that Ian put in here. When Middleton comes back and Taurean Prince can hopefully slide back into more of his traditional role, we'll see if that becomes a dip off in usage, that his efficiency, like he's a guy that needs the ball to stay hot, or can he still deliver in less opportunities? If he could still deliver in slightly less opportunities, and you do have the upgrade of also getting Chris Middleton back, like watch out for the Bucks, who are pretty much a watch out team right now, starting to play really well. Watch out for those Milwaukee Bucks. I'm holding an under 50.5 on their win total ticket. And the way this team looks right now, I actually just have to be fortunate for what some of those early season woes were for kind of baking me in some nice wiggle room in that under 50.5 on the win total. Okay, so let's talk NBA Cup stuff and let's talk urgency of these games for these teams. The Milwaukee Bucks are 2-0 in their group with a point differential of plus 26. The Miami Heat are 1-1 in their group, East Group B. Dilante says the Bucks blow it up talk was so premature. Those people are hiding back in their caves like that little Homer Simpson meme where he slides back into the bushes. Dilante, we could for sure agree on this. Giannis is playing MVP level. Dame is still pretty fucking good. Lopez starting to look better. Curious Sports Poll says, enjoyed fading the Bucks while I could, but they play better right now, and I'm liking them tonight. Okay, so let's talk about the Cup stuff. Like I said, the Milwaukee Bucks are first place in East Group B right now, being 2-0 with a point differential of plus 26. The Miami Heat are in third place in East Group B, being 1-1 with a point differential of plus 11, I want to say. I believe they won by 13 and lost by 2. I feel very confident in that. Second place in this group right now are the Detroit Pistons, which is a team that this show and me and probably a lot of people, because we talked about it on the show, we displayed the live odds as they were sitting there before the NBA Cup started, to play the Detroit Pistons to win East Group B at 13-1. Now at DraftKings, the Detroit Pistons, despite being second place in East Group B, they were also 2-0 with a point differential, I believe, of plus 6. Their games have been tighter, but they are 2-0. At DraftKings, they are now currently favored to win their East Group B, despite currently being in second place because of point differential. Why would that be? Why would the Bucks, with a 26-point differential, plus 20 on the Pistons right now, be behind them in the standings? And that's because of this particular game where the Milwaukee Bucks are at Miami Heat and then at Detroit Pistons for the final game of the Cup. That is next Tuesday. A week from today will be a massive, 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 massive game. I believe that is December 3rd. I believe I tweeted out yesterday, mark your calendars, tell your little phone to say, I don't want to wake her up, but tell SIRI, the little Apple girl, to set a reminder for December 3rd to hammer the Bucks. Because this game doesn't actually matter that much. It does, and they will play with some urgency, because if the Bucks win and the Pistons lose on Friday, where I think they play at the Indiana Pacers, 99% sure that's correct as well. Then even if the Pistons go 3-0 and the Bucks go 2-1, or the Bucks go 3-0 and the Pistons go 2-1, then playing that game in the final night of NBA Cup could make both records even, where it then becomes point differential between those two teams. So almost regardless of what happens tonight, Milwaukee Bucks and the Detroit Pistons should still have commanding control, unless the Miami Heat come out and stomp the Bucks and put their ring in the hat and say, okay, now we're 2-1. Now we took out the team with a plus 26 point differential. We had a plus 11. So let's say the Bucks, there's 15 points between. Say the Miami Heat win by 8. All of a sudden, Miami Heat's flexing, saying we have second best record, because the Pistons are still going to be 2-0 after tonight because they don't play. So we're either going to have the Heat be 2-1, Bucks be 2-1, or the Bucks be 3-0 and the Heat be 1-3 and out. If the Heat lose tonight, they are out for their portion of NBA Cup related stuff. If the Bucks win tonight, they almost sealed the deal because Phoenix, the Pistons would then have to beat the Pacers. How come every time I want to say the Pistons, I say a different P team? I've already said the Pacers, and then I just said Phoenix. Fuck am I doing? The Detroit Pistons. If the Bucks go up 3-0 and already are plus 20 points on the Pistons, you almost need the Pistons to win on Friday to make it be a record-based game, because if the Pistons drop one on Friday, their plus 6-point differential goes down. Milwaukee's plus 26 is going to go up if they win. And then you're going to have a commanding one-game spread and massive point differential, where then the Pistons, got it right, would then be looking to win by 30 points, a la the Celtics last year, doing hack a Drummond through the final 8 minutes of a quarter to try and play for that spot. Or maybe they play for a wild card or whatever. So let's see if DraftKings still has that odds, because I believe the Milwaukee Bucks to have the upper position in this East Group B right now, because they're playing well, because Cade Cunningham is dealing with a back injury for that Pacers, Phoenix, Detroit Pistons that I keep talking about. And so if Cade is slightly banged up, if the Bucks are on an upswing, if Middleton is out 2 more games and then coming back, could it be that he starts to return at Detroit next Tuesday, December 3rd? Like, very possible. So I think this is a clear Bucks in East Group B where they have the edge. It is because they have 2 away games. And so that the way that they're going to be priced is underdogs, and then probably close favorites, low favorites playing in Detroit. Whereas the Detroit Pistons, I mean, they play in Indiana and then home against the Bucks. So I don't think it's that much easier. I'm going to share this tab. You can see on my screen the DraftKings odds. Plus 130 for the Pistons, plus 165 for the Milwaukee Bucks, plus 285 for the Miami Heat. I believe that to be incorrect, and I believe the Bucks should clearly be the favorite. You go to FanDuel and you go to East Group B, and they have the Bucks at plus 100. So they flipped the favorite, and I agree with FanDuel here. Now, on the previous show, we placed DraftKings 13-1 was the Pistons at DraftKings. It was the one we gave out on the show. And I typically not talk about not betting multiple things at the same sportsbook. Don't bet the over on the Wizards Hawks game, Wizards Bulls game. Wow, I'm so bad with teams today. Drew, I need you here so I can collect my thoughts and get the teams right. When the Wizards and the Bulls play tonight, you could have bet the over at DraftKings at 240.5. And now that number is like 245 or 245 and a half. And I would not recommend playing the under back at DraftKings, because then you're waving a flag at them saying that you're sharp. If you're doing it in the futures market, this is actually hedging. I mean, technically the in-game stuff is hedging too, but if you're picking off closing line value that much even before a game tips off and playing it back and opening a positive value middle simply by riding line movement, you're like dancing in their face about how sharp you are. And that's just honestly rude and not good for your account health and your relationship with the operators of DraftKings. So then I would look towards the futures market when you're betting these things, and I wouldn't worry about those things, because this is like you bet the Pistons. They ended up winning 2 games, probably exceeding expectations in those 2 spots. Now the odds have drastically changed. This is not a pregame line movement where you're just noticing market shifts, beating the market, beating closing line value. This is, I got right in the first 3 nights and 2 games of NBA Cup stuff, and now I want to almost hedge my bet. But really, it's almost like I'm reworking the odds so that I believe the Bucks should actually be the favorite. So I know this is a lengthy discussion about this, but I think it's very important, because I think this is a pretty sharp slate. and the best available line on the whole fucking slate is the plus 165 for the Bucks to win their group. Like, actually, I had 13-1 on the Phoenix Pacers that we call the Detroit Pistons. And so I took that 13-1 ticket. I put a fraction of it, and I started to accumulate and I started to add not only the exposure that I had on the 13-1, not only using what I was projected to net win if that ticket did hit, I started using, okay, what additional exposure am I going to put into this market so that I could create essentially an arbitrage situation where I took the Heat at, I believe I took the Heat at FanDuel because they were really nice and juicy. Yeah, plus 410. They're plus 265 on DraftKings. So I took a fraction of the Heat just in case they beat the Bucks tonight by 8 and they have a back in the points race and then right there in the record race. And then I went to DraftKings and I took the plus 165 on the Bucks, and I essentially created a position where if Pistons win or the Miami Heat win, I return my money, and I took all of the potential profit from that Pacers ticket that I would have won, and I dumped it all into the Bucks. So now my exposure in East Group B is significantly tilted towards, I hope, for a Bucks outcome. Now, that kind of means this game is very important to me, and I don't really have to bet it from an exposure standpoint, which is kind of nice because the market's been super flat. I've seen a lot of people want the Bucks in this game. That does scare me a little bit, given how much that the Miami Heat have had this team's number in the past few years with these cores. I'm sure Miami Heat, they want this matchup. They want the Bucks as they start to play better to be like, chill, guys, you guys still suck. This is a nice little rivalry that's brewed in the NBA over the last few years. So I want no action in the game. I get scared off about how many people want the Bucks and seemingly no line movement so far, yet probably some public action coming in. I would be very curious what the late moves are in this game. If we start to see Heat minus 2.5, Heat minus 3 pop up, that would be very, very, very telling for me that this might actually be a Miami Heat spot at one of those like little sharp versus pros versus Joes, sharps versus squares, kind of classic spots. Total 222, relatively open there, stayed right there. Nothing really to speak of in a direction. If anything, I would actually consider the over. Before we break down the Houston Rockets at the Minnesota Timberwolves, I would like to remind everybody to please, if you are watching on the live stream, would love if you just drop a like on the YouTube channel, drop a comment in the YouTube chat. If you're watching on the Twitter stream, simply like the post or drop a comment on there as well. And if you're listening on the podcast stream, please drop a 5-star on Spotify or write an Apple review and leave us a good note there. We would appreciate just those little efforts in making us grow. We have 245 people watching the live stream right now. I understand most of you guys are on the Twitter and X stream. You can't comment in there. You can't really drop a question in there. So I would head over to the YouTube if you could. And podcast listeners, the live stream where we're showing the odds screen, where we're going through highlights, where we're flipping the pages and showing you where that DraftKings line is. Now coming back to the FanDuel screen. I hope you guys can start to tune in live every day, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern. Okay, let's talk Rockets at Timberwolves. Line's been 3.5 the whole damn time. It's another spot similar to the Bucks where a lot of people want the Rockets, and I'm hesitant to say Rockets are the side with seemingly a lot of early, probably public action coming in and yet no line movement. So, like, what gives? In fact, FanDuel, you see, has it at minus 112 right now. I don't think they've moved the line once. Yeah, that was the open. They did move the line. So they opened it yesterday at 7:07 p.m. at minus 3.5, minus 112. They moved it at 12:30 p.m. to -110 on the Minnesota side. They moved it at 1 a.m. to -108 on the Minnesota side. So staying at 3.5, but the VIG was flipping around to now where we're back where Minnesota's -112. This morning at 8:20 a.m., probably 40 minutes before we went live on the stream. And we're back to the original starting place of Minnesota -3, juiced -112. That is the consensus odds across the screen. There's -110s pretty much everywhere else. So definitely shop around. If you want the Rockets, you go to FanDuel. If you want the Wolves, you go just about anywhere else laying -110s. As I'm talking right now, I'm starting to see Bookmaker move to 4. Bet Online juice the Wolves to -115. Bovada juice the Wolves to -115. Those are some Bookmakers, not an offshore, but the other two are. Just interesting to see those lines start to move and take the Wolves side. So eye-opening to see the Wolves action coming in. Now, the line at 3.5 tells a little story. Now we have Ian's injury chat. Doubtful is I saw Dylan Brooks, the D for Dylan, and I thought that was the doubtful. In is Dylan Brooks and Fred VanVleet. 2 V's. Van Vliet. Now I assume everyone listening to this is like, why is Mike re-emphasizing how you pronounce Van Vliet? Because it's not Van Fleet. You know when he might be Van Fleet? If he needs an enema. All right, questionable Jalen Green. Probably very few people understood that. Questionable Jalen Green, Mike Conley, Joe Ingles. I kind of don't think Conley's going to play. Maybe he is going to play, and that's why the total has started to come back down. I believe that the total news is a little relevant to Mike Conley because he's better and more savvy defensively than his replacement options in Rob Dillingham or increased minutes for Dante DiVincenzo. But on the flip side, if he's out and you get DiVincenzo's volume of threes and Dillingham's speed and pace, you're going to see a little bit more overaction. So I would say Conley doesn't totally impact the spread that much at this point in his career anymore, maybe half a point. And it's really the total that you should be dependent on the Conley news and the Jalen Green news. Like if Jalen Green ended up missing, that's a huge plus for the under. Now, I think a lot of smart people can debate what that would mean for the value of the spreads. I could tell you the under would take some serious action, and I think that Jalen Green being questionable is probably related to the half-point drop in this. It would be very interesting to see what smart people think in terms of what's the value on the spread of Jalen Green. Efficiency versus volume versus the matchup going against Anthony McDaniels. Do you want his volume? Probably in lack of efficiency in the spot. I'm personally very pro Jalen Green. Like I actually think he's very good. And it could be a very, very, very good player in this league. Like almost could emerge into what we think of Booker. Would be my high hopes for Jalen Green. And therefore, I would say, and I know in terms of market moves, like the line would move to 4 on the Wolf side and 3 or 4.5, 3. The line would move to -4 on the Wolf side and +4 on the Rocket side. -4.5 on the Wolves side, +4.5 on the Rocket side. If Jalen Green were to be out, he would be worth half a point or a point towards the spread on the repricing. It would just be very interesting to see where action came after that news. That would be very, very interesting. In terms of this line being 3.5 and staying there the whole time, if we had priced this game preseason, where the Minnesota Timberwolves were expected to be atop the West and the Houston Rockets were supposed to be a middling play-in team in the Western Conference, we would have seen, we're at home, we would see this line at like -5.5, -6, maybe -6.5, like dare I say a -7. We have price down and power rated down the Timberwolves, and we have power rated up the Houston Rockets, deservedly so on both accounts. So I think 3.5 is pretty telling. I believe NBA home court in the regular season to be worth about 2.5 points. So market saying Wolves better by 1 point on neutral. You guys can let me know how you feel about that. I'd probably say that's pretty fair. We talked about Houston's power rankings on this show a week ago. And we said that Houston is probably better than the play-in team that they were projected, but we also still had the Wolves ahead of them. And it was one of those where I'm like, yeah, Wolves probably still slightly ahead. So to see Wolves probably 1 point better, one in some vig, the old 1.25, bring back the decimal odds, then I would say, yeah, we're looking at Wolves slightly better. And a game I really don't want to bet into in terms of the spread. Over under at 220. I actually bet 220.5 towards the over. I do believe it to be an over spot depending on the injury news. I believe that the questionables brought down the total a little bit, and I believe if those guys are going to be active, we see them end up coming back. Do I recommend betting something when we don't know where these injuries sit? No. I'm not like, oh, take a discount on the 220 because these guys are definitely going to play. I don't know. I'll text Jalen Green. I'll ask him. I'll see if he gets back to me before the end of the stream. Text sent with some Jay-Z lyrics popping off. Dilante says, poor Jalen Green got caught up with the Cougars. I think he's dating like a 35-year-old or something. I got to read more into that story. That's actually very common for a lot of young NBA players. Norlando Adams says, so the Bucks are favored in all my Arkansas sports books. Should I still hedge? Norlando, can you drop in what you had in the Pistons odds prior to starting and where your Bucks odds are now? And I will comment that after we talk about the San Antonio Spurs and the Utah Jazz. Now, this is the third matchup of these teams probably in the last 2.5, 3 weeks. No, probably less than 3 weeks, probably 2 weeks, where we had Wemby out. We had Wemby in the first one, and the Jazz ended up making a comeback and winning by 1. Then I believe Wemby was out, and it was a revenge spot for the Spurs, and they ended up having a massive comeback win. So now we are with Wemby back in the lineup and being in Utah, where the Spurs are minus 2.5. The Spurs were literally projected as a plus. I say projected because it was on the odds screen. And then I metaphorically internet ran over to the BetMGM page to try and hammer Spurs plus 4.5. Like imagine if Thor was playing whack-a-mole with his hammer. That's what I would have done if the Spurs were plus 4.5, which would have been damn right because the Spurs are down minus 2.5. So you would have been either taking some Jazz plus 2.5 or Jazz plus 118 on the money line and being, as Rihanna would say, cake, 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 cake. Instead, we're probably seeing some Jazz movement come in because this went to as far as Spurs minus 4.5 and it's come back the other way. I do think this is just a very well-priced game that's met its resistance point in both directions because we know that the Jazz were plus 4.5 before the injury news. We saw the injury news shift and the look-ahead market change, come down. When it was reposted, it was Spurs minus 4.5. It's come down to 2.5. That's probably right where it's going to settle. The total in early books that were left up, it was 222.5, and it started rising towards the total. If you start timing when those books come online and what their opening lines was, it gets a little convoluted to say what was the open for this game. The earliest line for this game was 222.5. The open for other places was 228. So I believe Circa came online at 228, and it's gone down to 226. So recreational books at open was an over spot. Sharp books at open was an under spot, and we're seeing it settle in the middle. Think we're pretty good right there on both accounts. Sharp lines, I would say let's invoke some Lil Dicky and save that money and not bet this game. Lakers visiting the Phoenix Suns. Now, this line has come down from 3.5 to 3, but we are awaiting the impending news of the likely active Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal. Kevin Durant said on the K Adams stream that he, on FanDuel TV, we're showing the FanDuel odds. Do we want to be on FanDuel TV? Fuck no. And then they would only let me talk about FanDuel odds. I wouldn't be able to pop up the DraftKings odds board or talk about where MGM opened or anything like that. So, but Kevin Durant was on FanDuel TV talking to Kay Adams, up in Adams, and he said he was coming back against the Lakers. So I would assume KD active. We also have heard the same thing for Bradley Beal. Now, both are still listed as out, planning to return, or Ian has it here as probable now. When those guys do come out for shoot around, come out for warm-ups, we are not going to get the Shams news break that they're good to go until an hour and a half before tip, once they've done shoot around, taking the little time, and then been like, yeah, we're getting ready for game time. So in terms of where this line is right now, it's at -3, to which I would only say it's probably discount time right now on the Phoenix Suns. I do expect Beal and Durant to play. It would be a weird setback thing that happens in warmups, so that would immediately lock the lines and pull this off the board and then open as Pick'em or Lakers -1. If any of them, maybe Beal, maybe not Beal. Beal, Suns -1. Kevin Durant, Lakers -1. And so if I'm looking at this now, you got to be betting Suns or nothing. If you want Lakers side, you're certainly waiting until those guys are active, and then at least getting a 3.5 back at that, or getting potentially a 4. And I think those are the correct lines. I don't think opening the Suns right now in the 3 and playing back the 3.5 or 4, it's not profitable. And I don't want to be riding either of those sides in the game. Now, Ian said something to me yesterday that made me very depressed, sad. Thought about it, was one of the first things I thought about when I woke up. Sad, sad, sad. How many more LeBron James, Kevin Durant games do we have left? If both of them play the next 2 seasons, and you're assuming they're active for every game where they go head to head, you're looking at like maybe 10 more, depending on how the rest of the season goes. And then do they play each other in the playoffs? So that's the optimistic end, that this happens 10 more times. That's horrible. Like, when LeBron is no longer in the league, as my dog is right here, a literal girl dog named LeBron. We call her Bronny because it ended up being a girl. It was a boy when I adopted her, and I was handed paperwork for a male dog. Took dog home. Girlfriend at the time sees dog, says, Mike, this dog doesn't have a penis. I said, what? I didn't bother looking. There's a little nub thing there. There was a little nubby thing down there. I don't know what a dog vagina versus penis look like. I've had plenty of dogs, but I didn't study their genitalia. Turns out Bronny was a girl. Sex changed overnight in my New York City apartment back then. So now we call her Bronny. True story. True fucking story. Also, paperwork said that she was a golden doodle, or she was a rescue, because there was one of those Amish farms in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, that was raided by the cops for overbreeding practices, and they took away like 120 doodles of various kinds, and they distributed them to various rescue agencies at the time. I was going to rescue events a few times to try and find a dog. So I'd been to like 3 different rescue events to see if any of the dogs were like the right fit. We did not get the right dogs. There was a few great ones at some of those rescues, but people were there before us. So we actually found out that there was going to be a bunch of doodle puppies at this rescue, which is obviously a rare opportunity to rescue a doodle puppy. So I was like, fuck it. I'm going to be the first one there. My girlfriend at the time was working that day. I said, nah, I'm still going to go. The thing opened at like 8 a.m. I was there at maybe 5:30 in the morning, 6 in the morning. And we put a sign-up sheet. There was one other person there. Put a sign-up sheet on the door because I'd been to this rescue event previously, and the sign-up sheet about when you got there determined the order of choosing your dog. So I wanted to get there first so that I know I could have my choice. I ended up choosing a 6-month-old male golden doodle. So I thought. I get the paperwork. Not only do I get told a male, I also get told, yeah, he's probably going to be between 40 and 60 pounds. The building that I was living in had a 25-pound dog limit. So I'm like, all right, 40. I'm cool with the people in the building. Hopefully it'll be a good dog. There's a few other dogs that stretch the limit as well. Let's get the 40 to 60-pound dog. I like big dogs anyways. That's going to be a medium-sized dog. Let's get the 40 to 60-pound dog. We call the rescue agency back the next day. I don't have any bets on this game, so I'm telling the story. We call the rescue agency back the next day, and we say, hey, we actually have a girl. Definitely have one of the girls. I wasn't sure if it was definitely, but the people I was with was like, that's certainly not a dog penis. So we call back the rescue, say, hey, we have a girl. We think we just got maybe one of the sisters. They're like, oh yeah, you definitely got one of the sisters. We start looking up on the rescue's page of which dogs were going to be there, and we see one that looks exactly like Bronny. And the dog's name was Desi. And it was described as a mix between Great Pyrenees and Poodle, a Pyredoodle. And so we were like, we actually think we might have the girl Pyredoodle. And they were like, no, that's impossible. Like, no, that's impossible. And so they instructed us to go to a vet that was open on the weekends, because this was a Sunday, and get her microchip scanned, because although she was coming from an overbreeding situation, they were rescued, they were vaccinated, they were taken to a vet, they were microchipped, and so they had some of that basic stuff done pre-adoption. And so you think she knows I'm telling this story about her? She's right over there. So we called the rescue. We're like, we think we have the Pyredoodle. They tell us to go get the microchip scanned. We go to a vet that's open on the weekends. We get the number. We called the back. We said it is 3256164, whatever. And they go, so you do have the Pyrenees mixed with Poodle? And she's probably going to be between 80 and 120 pounds. I lived in a building with a 25-pound limit. Turns out she was 3 months old and not 6 months old. Therefore, she was the size of all the other dogs, but half the age and going to get fucking massive. And you know when you put those toys in water as a kid and they just start to expand? Like every night you wake up and they just get waterlogged and they become like the size of like an action figure or whatever. That's what happened to my dog. Because I tell you, every day I woke up, she was an inch bigger. And every time I went down the elevator and out of the building, the whole building was like, she's fucking massive. This dog is so big. And she was by far the biggest dog that's probably ever lived in that building. Okay, let's finish this off and talk Lakers Suns. LeBron is going to be in the building. I'll be rooting for LeBron, his namesake to my girl dog, Bronny. Phoenix Suns, probably the discounted side now because of Beal and Durant coming back. We're also seeing that in the totals market where we're seeing this move towards the over. So you'd have to think Beal and Durant back is good for the over. And the 3-point shooting, the amount of efficiency that the offense brings when Beal and Durant. Yeah, Beal and Durant. I was right. Durant's name should come first. Durant and Bradley Beal, when they are out there, they start shooting more threes. They're much more efficient as an offense. Obviously, those things should be easy to understand. And so we're seeing this total rise. So the total has taken movement as if these guys are definitely going to play. I wouldn't say when they're deemed active, this goes to 236, 237. I would say the spread starts to go back to -3.5 or -4. We even had that happen with Malik Monk yesterday, where we thought he was going to play all day. It hung out at Thunder -4. Malik Monk was active. It moves to 3.5 immediately upon him being active. And then like there's steam back towards the Thunder that pushed it to 4 again. But just the repricing on the injury news was 0.5 point. So if you're looking at it here and it's Beal and Durant and Beal, maybe it's a full point and we get to see Suns -4. All right. You NBA Cupheads. Over game, seemingly in the line movement in Lakers Suns. Mixed signals, but essentially, if you say rec books open this at 222.5, it went as high as 228 and come back down to 226. You'd say more movement towards the over than the under. It's probably settled. It's probably met its resistance point. It's probably at a sharp number. And I wouldn't say it's still an over spot. I think that would be a convoluted way to look at the number, but it has taken over action. This has taken slight under action. I believe, again, that's related to the Jalen Green questionable tag. And I think this is still an over spot. I would like betting this over. If he's at shoot around, if he's going to play, if you start to see this come back up to 221, I would forego the 1 point in terms of the information. If you know that Jalen Green is going to play or it gets moved to probable, I really like the over here. The Milwaukee Bucks and Miami Heat, I have no bets on this game. We've seen some seemingly public action on the Bucks. The line hasn't moved that much. We've seen another 0.5 point of movement towards the over since we've been doing this stream. We went over detailed that this is a spot where I bought the Bucks in their NBA Cup settings or the NBA Cup standings. So I'm kind of in a Bucks position on this game, but not directly on this game. Because again, if the Bucks drop to 2-1 and they end up playing the Pistons next week, they still control their destiny. Even if the Pistons win, even if Miami wins, then you're looking at a situation where Milwaukee still probably has point differential unless they lose by 8+ as a +2 underdog. I mean, yeah, it's certainly possible, but I'd say less likely. And then it would be Bucks holding their future going against the Pistons next week. If Bucks win, they're in a very, very strong position. That's why I like Bucks +165 in the Group B on their futures price. We have seen Bulls action. We have seen over action. My only bet on the card was the over 220.5 before Jalen Green went questionable. And I have a middle set up on the over 243.5 and the under 243.5 and the over 240.5 on that game, in which I saw the over action coming in, but didn't want it because some Jordan Poole news. All right. Dialante says she is pretty sexy, though. I'm not sure if he's talking about Jalen Green's cougar girlfriend or my adorably cute dog, LeBron. Batlin says Spurs. Yeah. I like Spurs more than Jazz here personally. Ian says, no, don't open that door. To which I would say, motherfucker, you opened that door, telling me that we almost had 10 LeBron and Durant games left. Sorry, I just put it into context. Man, Loco, we appreciate you being here, saying LeBron is so underappreciated. I would agree with this sentiment, except you're forgetting one thing. Like 12 O's on the word so, because LeBron is not so underappreciated. He is so underappreciated. I was going to make a list of most overperforming or most underrated players in the league. If I was going to make a list of the most underrated players in the NBA right now, LeBron James is number 1 on that list. Because to me, he is maybe the 4th best player in the league right now. Ian says LeBron, greatest career of all time. Yeah. I don't get into the whole ask me who's better, MJ or LeBron, and I'll tell you I don't know and I don't care. I was like 4 to 6 years old when MJ was on his repeat from 96 to 98. Was born in 92. So I'm 31 going on 30, 32 going on 33. Whoa. And am I 33 going on 30? No, I'm 32 going on 33. That's crazy. I don't know my own age. I don't get into the whole who's better, MJ or LeBron, because I didn't really watch MJ in the prime of his career. So in terms of what I've seen, LeBron is by far the best player I've ever seen. Man Loco says he's fucking 40. Why can't we just appreciate? There's too many haters out there. I appreciate the hell out of that, man. And honestly, off the court too, like seems like a gem of a human being. Seems like a good hang. Seems incredibly charitable. Seems like a great father figure. Seems like a great role model to a lot of people. Like, shout out LeBron. If LeBron is 4, is AD 1 or 2? AD's having a great season, but he's not better at basketball than LeBron James right now. Maybe. Hopefully. I would like AD to be better at basketball than LeBron James. I would hope by the end of the season I'm adjusting that ranking. There's been like 20 games. Dylante must have not watched the Olympics. Or the playoffs last season where he was ending the year on a 40-point triple-double. Or the Olympics. Or all of last season where he was the NBA Cup MVP. So, yeah, if we want to get it twisted, what's the Lakers record? Lakers are 10-6. Perhaps he also had 3 straight triple doubles. So perhaps so far in maybe 10 of the 16 games, AD's been slightly better than LeBron. If that makes you rank someone higher than somebody versus what's happened in the last year, you crazy. It's funny how Dylante, as we started the show, saying captain of the Halliburton Hive, is trying to say that AD is better than LeBron James because of what's happened in 2024 season, and yet still puts Halliburton above all these fucking guys. Morant is better. Trae Young is better. Jalen Brunson is better. De'Aaron Fox is better. LaMelo Ball is better. Oh, man. All right, let's end it there. Captain of the Halliburton Hive already. Halliburton's in Tyrese Maxey range at this point. Let's see if he could get out of that. But at this rate, Halliburton is not starting point guard for Team USA in 2028 unless he comes back to form. And if we're judging players based on 2024, move that motherfucker down the rankings and stop using the first half of his 2023 season to talk shit to me. All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We appreciate you. Over 300 people that have tuned into the show, all to hear me talk through this late and say, I don't really have that many bets. Over 220 on the Rockets and the Wolves, waiting on that Jalen Green news. A Bucks position in the NBA Cup market that I think is definitely worth taking. A Phoenix Suns side, if you want that side, it is discounted now because of the injury news that is coming. Thank you all for being here. We will be back tomorrow with Drew breaking down Wednesday's games, and then we'll be back on Friday also with Drew breaking down Friday's games, which is another NBA Cup day. So 2 more shows this week. I hope you guys all are tuned in for tomorrow. If you're not here tomorrow, if you're traveling, stay safe on Wednesday night. If you do go out, I know that's a pretty heavy drinking night. I hope you all have an amazing Thanksgiving. If you're not tuning in tomorrow, of course, there will be another show. I will say it, but I know a lot of people are pretty busy on the Wednesday prior to Thanksgiving. So I appreciate everyone that's tuned in thus far this season. The growth of this show has truly been amazing. And it's been a great time. I appreciate you guys all being here. It's been a great last few days for me in the betting market. So hopefully that continues for the rest of the week as well. Here is Patrick Beverly, as we say, Peace out. Y'all subscribe to my podcast while you're asking all these questions.
Y'all subscribe to my podcast while y'all asking all these questions. Don't forget to subscribe to the pod. And if you're a kid, listen to your parents. Listen to your parents.
Listen to your parents.
Subscribe to the pod.
Subscribe.
Subscribe to the pod. Subscribe to the pod. Subscribe to the pod, man.
Good, those are good.